Welcome, everybody. Welcome in this Friday morning to a very interesting discussion on diversity and inclusion in social integration. Sorry for a few technical delay for the last 3 minutes, but we are all good now. I'll just do a quick introduction and move over to our main speakers. I'm Charlotte, a volunteer for this activity. Together with me, we have a few volunteers like Xiaomi, Chan Hung, Jeff, and as well as a few other speakers like Sukanya and Gauri. Now, why do we want to do this volunteering event on this topic, national integration or social integration in a diversity and inclusion context? Because we feel pride of the diversity in the society in Singapore, and we really want to look at a few very key elements in workplace, looking at what roles does diversity and inclusion have to play in the company's P&L structure in the workplace. Like, how important is social integration or national integration to do with your clients and your employees? And other things like, why is it important to have integration both at the social level and at the organization level? When we go through this discussion, our speaker, Jeffrey, will talk through quite a few principles, approaches, examples, and inviting our speakers into the show. So for that, sit back, relax, and enjoy a session. Of course, we will also want to thank NIC for leading us in this journey. Jenny, Grace, and Monica has been extremely helpful in guiding us in this volunteering event. So thank you, and we welcome all our participants here. You are mainly our CEOs, C-suites, and leaders. So we look forward to having an interactive discussion with you later on. And thank you. And over to you, Jeffrey. Oh, sorry, have I been? So I'm not sure whether I was on mute. Jeffrey, can I just check, do you hear me well for the last 3 minutes?
Yes, Charlotte, we can hear you. Yeah. And before I
Jeffrey,
start...
I think you're on mute now. Can't hear you. Still on mute.
Okay, I've unmuted myself. Can you hear? Excellent. Before I start, perhaps I'd like to invite Salmi.
Can't hear.
Salmi,
can I test whether Chan Hung can hear Jeffrey?
I can hear.
Okay, good. Chan Hung has shown a good sign, so it's me. So that's good. So Jeffrey, please proceed. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Charlotte. Before I start, I'd like to invite Salmi to just share a few quick words from the IWA point of view. Over to you, Salmi.
Thank you, Charlotte and Jeffrey. We at Indian Women's Association are grateful to be hosting a webinar on a topic very close to our cause. And for this opportunity, we are thankful to MCCY and NIC for enabling such an important conversation to the forefront. When it comes to diversity and inclusion in social integration, Indian Women's Association is a case in point. We are a voluntary, not-for-profit organization celebrating our 25th anniversary next year. Our membership is representative of both the expatriates as well as the local Indian communities. IWA endeavors to bring the society together by providing a platform where members connect, support, and network with each other. Our members participate in social, cultural, educational, philanthropic activities, and integration is our priority. Would we be able to celebrate our success and the 25th anniversary milestone had we not been inclusive? Inclusion based on skill sets and an initiative to serve the society in a country we now call home is our driving force, and our diversity is what makes us whole. The tectonic plates of world immigration are constantly moving, and today's conversation is about us. As leaders, are we being inclusive? and embracing the diversity. The world we seek to shape shall bear the imprints of the decisions we make today. Our world today is increasingly an interconnected one. Our borders are not impermeable. Our world is marked by a greater flow of workforce, ideas, millions of emails, movies, viruses, McDonald's, tweets. Being inclusive and embracing diversity is the defining reality of our modern existence. By not being inclusive, we encourage social vulnerability, which cannot be good for the world order. The future we leave for our generations needs to improve on the past. Let's celebrate on this and hear some positive stories and tools to help us achieve this mindset. Once again, thank you for joining us as we ponder on ideas of inclusiveness and diversity in social integration. Over to you, Jeffrey.
Thank you, Selmi. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you. And what I'd like to do is to start with this quote from John Lewis Jr., the Global Chief Diversity Officer of the Coca-Cola Company. And he says, right now, our fastest growing markets in the world are Sub-Saharan Africa, China, and India. How we win in these markets is as much a matter of how we embed ourselves in these cultures as any other factor. The question I put to my business leaders is, even if we get all the tactics and logistics right, can we win if we don't get the people part right? Yeah. So this is a very important and penetrating question by John Lewis Jr. Indeed, even if we get all the tactics and logistics right, can we win if we don't get the people part right? And we'll explore a bit of that today. For the next hour, you will view and see how you can leverage on diversity and inclusion in your workforce to help get that people part right. How we'll do it very quickly, we'll do it in 3 portions. The what portion, we'll do a bit of, we'll discuss a bit about the definitions, and then Dr. Leong will share his experience on how magnanimity might cut through and mitigate, some of the structural inequalities. We'll also speak a bit about what every one of us have in common, and that's unconscious bias. And Raymond will speak a bit about his experience with that. We'll talk about very quickly about the why part. Why diversity and inclusion, a bit on the business case, as well as how when we include others, we create this place where everyone feel they belong, and how that might help you, your organization, and the workforce at large. Lastly, and I think very importantly, is the how part. What can we do? Yeah, and here I'll share the disciplines that inclusive leaders practice, and Gauri will share her own experiences in how she utilized that. Very important, the growth mindset, the foundation in which we build inclusion and belonging. Sukanya will share her experiences on how, accessing the intellectual curiosity and growth mindset can help build inclusion. And last but not least, how we react to threats and turn that around, perhaps, to build safety and reward the brain for going through situations where we can turn threats into rewards. Yeah, putting it all together, then what we'll explore are the conditions that might need to be in place in order to have inclusive conversations. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a full-packed 1 hour for you. Yeah, hopefully we will get enough time for Q&A. If there, at any point of time you have any questions, please feel free to have a conversation in chat. Yeah, running parallel to our presentation, you will be able to have a chat conversation also. Okay, so what is diversity? if you look at the definition of diversity, ladies and gentlemen, it has changed over time. The baby boomers, the traditional view, look at diversity as the acceptance of co-workers of different races, ethnicities, genders, ages, religions, disabilities, and sexual orientations. Millennials and Gen Z, on the other hand, see it a little differently, right? They take a slightly more, if you want, modern look at it. They see diversity as the acceptance and embracement of co-workers with differences in education, personalities, skill sets, experiences, and knowledge base. So not only do they take on this traditional view, they add on the extra portions of culture and knowledge to the mix. So if you look at this difference through a perceptual gap lens, where the millennials take this more modern view and the baby boomers and Gen Xers take a more traditional view, does that explain some of the conversations you're having in your workplace? Some of the potential conflicts that might come up? If it does, then how can we get that same base to have this conversation? Yeah, what options may you want to take? And we can discuss this offline, because unless we have a common view, perspective of diversity, it is hard to have a conversation. And that's the point I'm trying to make. Yeah. This quote by Verna Myers is really very important, and I feel very useful. And she says, diversity is being invited to the party, whereas inclusion is being asked to. Without inclusion is not as useful. It might even cause more problems. So diversity and inclusion is joined at the hip. Both must happen at the same time in order for you to reap the benefits you're looking for. So what we'll do is we'll talk more about how we can include people and help them belong in your organization. Yeah. So at this point of time, I'd like to invite Dr. Leong, who will now share with you his experience where magnanimity helped mitigate a structural inequality situation. Over to you, Dr. Leong.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm going to share some slides on my screen. So
I'll
Jeff,
stop sharing.
You stop sharing.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much. Just give me a sec, right? All right, a very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Very warm welcome to this webinar on diversity and inclusion. What I'm going to do is to share with you a story, a short one, and I'll leave it to you to think about, the meaning behind the story. Now, this is a story about a young man that happened some 20 years ago. In fact, it was a young couple with a toddler. Now, like all young people in Singapore, they have a dream, right? Like you and I, right? And the dream for the young couple is to study abroad. So quite fortunately, right, the young man has a scholarship, a partial scholarship to study in Wellington, New Zealand. I'm not sure if any one of you here came from Wellington, but greetings, kia ora. All right, now, so when we went there, when the young couple went there, they found that it's actually not a bit of roses. They were financially challenged all the time, and more so with a little toddler. So the young man had to juggle part-time jobs to make ends meet, pretty much living on paychecks to paychecks. So one day, the little boy, the little baby that they have, was ill, right? And so they took him to see the doctor, right? And for those of you who are aware of how the medical system works, right? You see a medical doctor, and then you get a prescription from doctor to collect at the pharmacy. So the man picked up the prescribed medication at the local pharmacy, and to his surprise, it was kind of free, and apparently medical treatment for children below the age of 6 is free of charge in New Zealand, but this is for residents only. And I guess the pharmacists assume that the man was a resident because very few international students would bring along the little children, to study, right, to tag along. So the toddler took a while to get well, and the man had to, go back to the pharmacist to pick up additional courses of the medication. And knowing how the system worked, right, the man kind of put on his best Kiwi accent, in asking for the prescribed medication, right? So good day, mate, right? Could you get me, one of these for my little baby, right? Something along the line, all right? You get it. So the pharmacist obliged without asking for any verification of the man's residency, right? And that took a while, right? So it went on again until the little boy got better. So on one final occasion, and feeling somewhat guilty, I asked if it was okay for a non-resident like myself to pick up the medication for free. And to my surprise, right, the pharmacist said, "I don't want to know, mate. Right, hope your kid is fine." Right. So that random act of kindness made a lasting imprint in my life. And for the longest time, I will always remember the generosity and magnanimity. Now, I'm not proud of my Kiwi impersonation, but I'm certainly grateful for that kindness and and hospitality of the people in New Zealand, my host. And this is the same story that has been shared for many years to come, and it has a great impact in many ways. Not just about sharing a story in a webinar like this, but I also became sort of like a lifelong, benefactor and a strong alumni in my university, and anything in anything to do with New Zealand, I have a fond and interest in that. So this is an article that I wrote for the Straits Times about 8 years ago. You can check it out at this website. But I hope this story and the narrative can make a difference. And thank you for attending this webinar. Hope to hear from you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Back to you, Jeff. Jeff, I think you are muted.
Yes, I'm on mute. Sorry. Thanks, Jan. Peter Senge said, structure influences behavior. And Alfred Chandler says, structure follows strategy. What I really like is Peter Drucker then says, culture eats strategy for lunch. So we all know that organization structures have their advantages and disadvantages, strengths and weaknesses. And what I like to advocate is this: the quality of our relationships influences how we listen and treat each other. And that, ladies and gentlemen, will help mitigate some of the inadequacies we may have in our organizational structures, as highlighted by what Chan Hung has just shared. So something to ponder on, yeah? Does your organization have a problem with team performance? What about making high quality decisions? Do you want your teams and personnel to be more collaborative instead of working in silos? If your answer to this, ladies and gentlemen, is yes to anyone, to whatever degree, or maybe more than one, then welcome to the club. Many of us, many organizations have these challenges, and therein lies this business opportunity. You see, Burke and Titus, in their research, they found that teams with inclusive leaders are more likely to report they are high performing, more likely to say that they make high quality decisions, and more likely to report behaving collaboratively. These behaviors, ladies and gentlemen, translate to business impact, performance. For example, Korn Ferry has found that you can get higher growth if you're more inclusive, 70% more likely to capture new markets, faster ideas becoming productized, better productivity. Companies with ethnically diverse teams are 33% more likely to outperform on profitability and better innovation. companies with above average diversity report a 19% higher innovation revenue. So what can we do then, ladies and gentlemen, to achieve this kind of inclusive leadership, to get the business impact we want? Yeah, I would say, let's start with something we all have in common. And let's do a very short story here. So for those of you who have heard this, please just sit back and enjoy. You might want to think about what this means to you right now, right, as compared to when you first heard of it. And the story goes like this. A father and son were going fishing together and set off in the father's car. Sadly, they were involved in a horrific accident and the father is killed instantly, right? The son is badly injured and is rushed to hospital needing urgent life-saving surgery. The surgeon then enters the operating theater and stops short saying, I can't do this. This is my son. Who is this surgeon? What is the surgeon's relationship to the patient? Please, very quickly, 5 seconds, put your answer in chat. Yeah. I've run this many times. Very recently, I've run this with my class in SUSS, and the first answer was grandfather. My colleague ran this in UK with the NHS, and the biggest problem came from one of the medical staff. He just couldn't wrap his head around this. So many of you got this right, mother, right? And I noticed that the first 3 who got the answer correct are ladies. Interesting. Then followed by Jason. Maybe you can have an offline discussion on why the ladies got it first rather than the gentlemen. Yeah. But just to highlight, we do have inherent unconscious bias. The thing is, what can we do, to be aware of this unconscious bias? Yeah. For me, the most useful way is to get feedback from people I trust and respect, people who see the world very differently from me. However, there's also an easier way, and that is to take this Harvard Implicit Association test. You will see the link here and the QR code. Don't worry, we'll give you a handout after this webinar, and you can access these tests for free, right? Just get a sense. When I did it, I was quite surprised with one of my implicit bias. You may get surprised too. The main thing is to be aware of where we might be biased. I'd like to invite Raymond, who will now share his encounter with implicit bias during an acquisition exercise. Raymond, over to you.
Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for taking time today to join us on this diversity and inclusion topic, which is also very close to my heart. When I was preparing for this session, I was at a coffee shop, and that was when I realized that inclusion really transcends many settings, even at that coffee shop. So before I go back to the coffee shop story, I would jump to the main part of the story. Our company is a small one. About 6 years ago, we made an acquisition in North America. At the time, we were only present in 3 countries, one in Asia, one in Europe, and one in North America. Now, ours is a small shop. We only have 2 shareholders. Both are from the same Asian country. Our target company was in North America, and the owners were European. So if you put everything together culturally, I think the odds were against us. But we did the entire acquisition and post-acquisition was a huge success. The acquired company turned profitable within a year. And within 6 years, I mean, right, as we speak right now, we are about 6 times larger, right? So when I look back, we were very cognizant that we were a smaller and younger company. We were dealing with sellers and employees of the target company and who came from different backgrounds, different cultures, and that we the new team coming in, we had to respect the cultural differences, and I thought that's what we did. Now, what do I really mean when I say respect the culture? I think there are many layers to that, but in the deepest, innermost layer is that desire, that acknowledgement that there are differences that we can embrace, right? So that's the positive part of the story. There was almost a negative part of the story. Soon after the acquisition was completed, we had to hire a head of sales for the region. We had retained nearly the entire team. I had the plant manager and Mr. KJ. I had a controller, Miss ET, and I asked them for referrals on who they thought might be good to fill the position. They gave a few referrals, and unknown to me, my conversation with KJ and ET, there was a very clear implicit bias to both of them, but it was clearly not known to myself. So I think the first part where culturally we respected probably had something to do with that. ET put me aside, gave me a hint, and told me that, hey, look, Raymond, I think the implicit bias you have on a certain point is quite obvious. I need you to be aware of that, right? So it was actually age, right? Unknown to me, every single candidate that they were asking, that they were referring, I was asking them what's the age, and I was almost going to give a pass on someone who is more senior, right? Thankfully, ET gave me the hint. Jointly, the decision was made by the entire team. We hired this gentleman, JK. He was 62 years at that time. He led the sales team very well for the next 4 years. Huge contributor to our company in the US, being 6 times the size of what it was, right? So that's the implicit bias I had. Not proud of that, but glad that it's something that I became aware of, right? So back to the coffee shop, most of us would have witnessed a similar scenario. You have bought your food, your trays are full, you are going around looking for a table. The coffee shop is also full, so you then have to share a seat with someone. We might have also witnessed this from a sitting down perspective when someone else is looking for a seat and they were approaching various tables. Sometimes they get a yes, sometimes they get a lukewarm yes, and sometimes they get a no. So I leave the audience with this. When I say implicit bias may transcend different settings, I'll leave this question to you. When people do say no at the coffee shop, is implicit bias one of the reasons? I hand the time back to Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you, Raymond. Let me share my screen again. Okay, so I must say, Raymond, I think I'm guilty too, yeah? The trick is, are we aware of it and then mitigate and make a choice of what we want to do? I think that's the key message I hear from you. Excellent. So let's move on. Inclusive leadership. Let's talk a bit about that, ladies and gentlemen. And what then might inclusion be, right? According to Deloitte, inclusion is when people feel they are treated fairly and their uniqueness is appreciated and they have a sense of belonging with a voice in decision making. That's when they feel they are included. And there are 3 elements identified by Deloitte, right? Fairness and respect. They feel the process is fair, they feel respected. Please read the subtext also. That can be quite instructive, right, in the slide, and you'll get it in your handout. The second portion, they feel valued and they belong. That there's this, social connectedness. They're in the in-group, so to speak, right? And the third element would be confidence and inspiration. And that is where you're able to rally people and they can then speak up and make a difference, get results in what you're doing. that, ladies and gentlemen, is inclusion as defined by Deloitte. Yeah. And I tend to agree that you can get that. Yeah. So let me share this with you. Let me ensure that I'm sharing sound. Sorry about that. And while you're looking at this, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to just take a note when you watch these 2 video clips, what you're thinking and feeling when you're watching the clips. Here goes.
Mom, my shoelaces.
You can do it.
Please.
Okay. 2 bunny ears, loop around and pull together. Got it?
I don't want to be here.
James, I want you to pick an artwork you like and tell me about it. Art is a wonderful thing and I want to enjoy it with you, okay?
Okay.
What do you see?
See?
Okay.
Before you towers a terrifying scene of war. Thousands of forces break the grassy ground in a cavalry charge. Soldiers sporting blood-red uniforms ride with valor in a fearless resolve to attack. Some blow military bugles, others raise their voice in a war cry. Mighty silver blades are exalted above their heads. Leading up front, a commander on a mighty white stallion. The beast's eyes were wide and ferocious, every muscle and vein pulsing through his skin. The commander rides the steed high, his face blazing with heroism, but still in his eyes a glimmer of fear. For at the front line, survival is not guaranteed.
I'm so proud of you.
Can you describe that one to us over there?
So, ladies and gentlemen, quickly just note down what you're thinking and feeling. Yeah? And I'd like to invite you to watch this second clip, which is about 2 minutes. Then we'll proceed from there.
Before you towers a terrifying scene of war. Thousands of forces break the grassy ground in a cavalry charge.
We're here at the Art Gallery of New South Wales filming a little film about how when we're all inclusive we create a much more vibrant world. So I'm really excited to be here and have some students from Bus Stop Films assisting us. Bus Stop Films helps people with an intellectual disability learn about filmmaking, and today we're giving a few students work experience on set, which is awesome.
Today to learn from that is important to me to learn more important, get into the film stuff.
And it's been like really enjoyable, just having a good time and chatting to different people and just having a good time.
I'm really excited about this film because I think it has a number of really important messages which don't get talked about much in the general community.
The big hope that I have for the project is that people will see that inclusion takes all of the community and everybody has a role to play in including people with disability. And when you see this film, I think you're going to see what your part in that will be.
So, ladies and gentlemen, what are you thinking and feeling right now, right? Please just take a moment and pen your thoughts, right? How might you want to encourage more diversity and or inclusivity in your organization? Please write it in the chat so that we can learn from you too, yeah? So just take about 15, 20 seconds. I'll give you some time to type in chat what you might want to do, or at least what you're thinking or feeling. And while you're doing that, let me just move on. We might want to do something, but do we have the competence to do it, right? Do we have the skills to do it? The book, The 5 Disciplines of Inclusive Leaders by Tapia and Polonskaya, I hope I got their names pronounced correctly, they've identified 5 disciplines. And they are: 1, to build personal trust. That is being honest, to follow through, to establish rapport by finding common ground while simultaneously being able to add value to perspectives that differ from our own. 2, to integrate diverse perspectives. And that means to consider all points of view, the needs of others, and to skillfully navigate, right, conflicting situations. 3, to optimize talent, to motivate others, yeah, support their growth and join forces, right, for people to get collective success across differences. 4, applies an adaptive mindset. And this is ever more so, especially during this pandemic, right? To take a broad worldview, adapt, approach that suit the situations as they arrive, and to innovate by leveraging differences. And number 5 is to achieve transformation. And that's the willingness to confront difficult topics, bring people of all backgrounds along to achieve results and performance that you seek. So, ladies and gentlemen, please think about your own leadership practice and the behaviors of the leaders in your organization. How much of these practices or disciplines do you see in daily interactions? What choices or options do you have? Yeah, give that a thought and pen that down. Here, I'd like to invite Gauri, who will now share with you how she used some of these inclusive leadership behaviors to include others and to find a sense of belonging for herself. Over to you, Gauri.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm a sort of a storyteller, so please give me attention. Now let's imagine a scene from the sci-fi movies, all right? A devastated world and its dystopian societies. The artificial world with synthetic humans and myriads of other worlds scattered throughout the foreign galaxies, yeah? We watch all these kind of movies every day. Now in these movies, there's always a quest with a hero, smart and strong, a cape swiftly swaying in the wind, or this hero carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. Now he ultimately saves the day. Now, the decisions these leaders make, the actions they take, culminate in the restoration of humanity. What's curious is that this iconic image of the heroic leader remains constant, despite the vastly changed environment. But if come to thinking about leadership differently, we are on a repeating loop, yeah? It comes for a great entertainment, but it is not the stuff of reality. The context will change. It is already changing, actually. And this will demand that the adaptation by those playing a leading role is quick and swift. So what is this different context? What is the new leadership capability that is being called for? The definition of leadership, is it going to be anything more than what it is today? Think about 5 years, 10 years, 15 years from now. Namaskar. My name is Gauri Savadi. As an Indian Women's Association associate, I'm humbled to be in the presence of such an esteemed audience today. Now, how can we build personal trust, integrate diverse perspectives, and adapt to new environments in diversity and inclusion as the motive of social integration in Singapore? In my limited capacity as a citizen of this world and in the capacity of being a leader of sorts, I would like to highlight certain leadership traits of an inclusive leader. The very first signature trait in my books is curiosity. Because with curiosity comes learning and new ideas. Now, myself as an early childhood educator, having held position of as a director for NDUC group of schools, and as an advocate for kids, I have always known that we need to create a safe environment for our pupils to query and learn. Now, this thirst of continual learning helps drive attributes associated with curiosity. Some things like open-mindedness, inquiry, and empathy. Now, much time and effort are required to hone these behaviors. Hence, as an individual, I am very curious. So if I was not curious today to know more on how dragon borders work in synchrony, I would never have entered this new world of sports. Hence, eventually making my way into the Singapore Senior National Dragon Boat team. As an athlete, once on the boat, I have to ask curious questions and actively listen sometimes, mirroring the behaviors, the lingo, and to be able to sort of seamlessly know where the core skills that the teammates are deepening, to understand the perspectives of the more diverse individuals that are there. So yes, blending in is definitely the mantra. The next intertwined trait I want to highlight is courage. Sorry, I'm referring to my slides. Yeah, is courage. Give me a quick second. Sorry, the next trait I would want to highlight is actually cultural intelligence. Now, to be confident and effective in cross-cultural interactions, the ability to function effectively in different culture setting is more about just having not just having a mental map of different culture frameworks, but it is about having your own cultural impacts and your personal worldview, as well as how being cultural stereotypical can influence expectations of the others. While an understanding of cultural similarities and differences is important, I think at a deeper level, individuals' thirst for learning means that they are also motivated to deepen their cultural understanding and to learn from the experience of working in a very unfamiliar environment. Now, how does one individual further assimilate in the culture of the land? I would like to put an example here where participating in the Chingay Parade, for example, gave us as IWA members a huge insight into Singapore Street Festival. This multicultural parade today involves not just Chinese traditional acts, but also extended it to becoming a multiracial impressive cultural event. Now, an inclusive individual understands that the ability to adapt does not mean going native, which can cause one to lose sight of what they want to achieve by overcompensating for new cultural demands. But as it is put forth, it's about being flexible but authentic. I think a more inclusive leader is someone who knows when to adapt and doesn't necessarily need to change who they are fundamentally. The next intertwined trait I want to highlight is courage. The courage comes into play as a willingness to take on the challenge, to break personal frontiers. As a new immigrant onto this small island, it was my desire to go deeper to know the hows and the mechanics of this new world. Why is Singapore one of the safest countries to live in? How do the authorities manage to upkeep this image? Now, I am a doer. So these curious questions further brought me to enlist as a volunteer with the Singapore Police Force. Today, I am a serving sergeant deployed at the Airport Police Division, keeping pace with security measures, showcasing police presence, and working towards the goal of making Singapore the safest country in the world. Now, ambitious, yes, but doable, because citizens like us are playing the balancing roles as professionals and volunteers. It is highly important that one needs to take the risk and recognize along with the balancing role of a wife, a mother, an employee. Now, it is never easy, as I may sound. You're surely going to have some failures along the way, and you will need to get up, shake it off, and get on with it. It is your patience and persistence that will take you long. So it is about courage and commitment to stay the course. Now, with an attitude of humility, self-awareness, and to admit we don't know everything is crucial as a leader. So one is not blindsided from the opportunities to learn. The last trait I want to highlight is being collaborative. The highly inclusive leaders empower individuals as well as create and leverage the thinking of diverse groups. The new IQ is based more on group intelligence, says Bruce Stewart, the acting director, strategic initiatives, US Office of Personnel Management. The old IQ is about how smart you are. The new IQ is about how smart you make your team. If you take it to heart, it will change the way you lead. Instead of the leader leading from the top of the pyramid, things have shifted and they are more like they lead from the middle of the circle. At its core, collaboration is about individuals working together, building on each other's ideas, and to produce something new or solve something complex. But while collaboration among similar people is comfortable and easy, as the saying goes, birds of the same feathers flock together. Now, collaborations between societies and organizations, as what we are practicing right now, are very crucial. In the end, I would like to leave you with a quote. There are few ingredients in true leadership: brains, soul, heart, and good nerves. Now, this is said by Klaus Schwab, founder and executive chairman of World Economic Forum. Over to you, Jeff. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gauri. Let me just tee this up again. Okay. And what you mentioned earlier on curiosity is just an excellent bridge to what we're going to talk about now. Yeah, the growth mindset. In order to foster more inclusivity and belonging, right? I believe it is crucial for us to adopt or possess a growth mindset. And this notion of growth mindset is put forward and made popular by Professor Carol Dweck. What I like to say is this. The key premise of a growth mindset is that individuals have the ability to learn and grow. And because we believe we have this ability to learn and grow, our focus is on the process of how we can get better. Therefore, in order to encourage and build inclusiveness and for people to belong in our workforce, we have to first believe that we can learn and grow in that effort to adopt a growth mindset. So instead of giving you a lot of theory about it, why don't you try and take this very quick assessment? Again, it'll be in your handout. This is done in collaboration with Carol Dweck through Mindset Works. It's free of charge. And if you have the time, do listen to Carol Dweck. I especially find this clip very interesting. So you may want to consider just giving it a peek or a listen. Yeah. Sukanya will now share with you her own experiences on intellectual curiosity and how the growth mindset can help bring about a more inclusive environment. Over to you, Sukanya.
Hi, good morning, everyone. As Jeff said, I'm Sukanya Pushkarna. I've been an active participant and member of the Indian Women's Association, and I'm really delighted to be here today. It's been fascinating listening to everyone's stories, and particularly Gauri's. I'm a big fan of hers. She's a daredevil, and I just enjoy watching her. So today we're talking about diversity, inclusion, and also social integration. And I'm going to start with social integration on an individual level. And because I think that these all work together. Diversity is something that we cannot deny anymore. Our world is diverse. Every day we engage in a world that's completely diverse in so many ways. We understand it in different ways, but the world is diverse, and that's the reality. Inclusion is what I would like to end with, because to me, that's the most important thing. And that's a choice we make in a diverse world to get the best out of that diverse world. But as I said, I'll start with my own experience of how social integration, it can be a starting point. But for social integration, personally, I have felt that, as Gauri said, curiosity about your environment, curiosity about the people around you is the starting point. We can only engage with the world that we are curious about. Otherwise, we are in our little island. So I grew up in the Air Force with my father in India, and we moved a lot. So I have a flexibility that's kind of inbuilt in my system. We moved every year or every couple of years, and we had to learn to survive in a changing world of different foods, different environment, different language, different school systems. And I kind of bring that curiosity about my environment wherever I go. So when I moved to Singapore 10 years ago from the US, I came with an excitement to learn about a new place that I knew little about and its people. And so it wasn't surprising that I found myself in museums. Singapore has some wonderful museums, and I came there because that's my passion. And I brought my passion and my curiosity into the museum. And what I learned in the museum helped me make sense of what I saw outside it. So the more I learned in the museums, the more comfortable I felt in Singapore, because I understood that a country that has lain in the Southeast Asian region, right at the crossroads between India and China, and even the rest of the world later, has this diverse environment, an environment that's like filled with all kinds of diversity, whether it's in people, communities, cuisine, ideas, values, religions, culture. And I bring this learning to be more comfortable and to make my place within my immediate environment, but I also bring this passion and this learning to others as I guide at the museums. And it's so exciting to be able to talk about a 9th century Tang Dynasty shipwreck and then tell people, look at all of the stuff and see how diverse was the population, how diverse were the people who were trading with each other, and how diverse were the people who were on this ship, that they came from every country. We can see from artifacts how inclusive the people on board were. There were different kinds of music, instruments that came from every part of the world, different kind of cooking utensils, and these people worked and sailed together in hard, hard seas. The same thing, how exciting it is to share the information about Ming Dynasty emissary like Cheng He, and to tell people, did you know that he was a Muslim emissary from the Ming courts who traveled the high seas into Southeast Asia and beyond, bringing with him a diverse group of people on multiple ships to do trade. This kind of international global environment is not new. It has been here for many years, thousands of years, in fact. And when we know about these things, we feel comfortable, we feel an excitement in what we see today. Singapore remains that kind of a place. And so I share this passion and this learning with people, and it also gives me a way to integrate at every level. When we bring our passion and our curiosity about people, it helps us integrate in many other ways as well. My interest in working with women, because I find women's groups really exciting and a place where I can learn and also make an impact in, that I have joined various women's groups like Indian Women's Association and the Soroptimists International Orchid Club here in Singapore, and helping and empowering our neighbors and other organizations. And through these organizations, I am reaching out to people that I would not otherwise meet, because I'm curious, how do the old people live in Singapore? I volunteer and I'm a Mandarin language befriender at the Methodist Welfare Services Bethany Nursing Home. And it's lovely to learn about aging and about the particular person I befriend as we sing songs and we talk about old days. And when I tell stories to little Malay children through my volunteering at Helping and Empowering Neighbors, I learn about after-school care for children who belong to a different community. And as I grow, I bring this information to the rest of my world where I may be playing a leadership role. And I would like to wrap up with my a little bit about the Indian Women's Association, which I think is an embodiment of an organization that epitomizes this diverse and inclusive, socially integrated workspace. Because what is an inclusive workspace? It's a safe space where a diverse group of people can meet, can talk and work together with a feeling of belonging. And it's a safe space in which when everyone can feel seen and heard, and where one can really give full play to their talent. And IWA has that perfect platform. We have special interest groups, and each group meets regularly. That is one of the most important things for social integration, I think, or building a community, is regular meeting to become friends, because only when we become friends, we know about each other, can we really do better things for our environment. We also have, as we build on, we have a shared platform, sort of shared interest platform. And while we are doing something that is of our shared interest, we then learn about the diversity within the group. That's how we get to learn about each other. And because we're already on a shared platform where we are already feeling fulfilled, we can celebrate all of this diversity, all of the uniqueness of each person, and still have that shared space. So we are no longer worried about the difference as something that's exclusive, but in fact it's inclusive. And I think at IWA, what we do is that we have had for a long time leadership that has believed strongly in inclusion as a mindset, that we are already attracting a diverse population, but we encourage people to feel, when people come in, we make them feel at home. We guide them to places where they can feel at home in their shared interest, but we also challenge them and give them new opportunities where they can grow. And then as a group, we go out into the community and we serve the community. And that's how we build, our social connections. And so I wish that most organizations would look at IWA as kind of a model of what they could set up within each working environment, because we are, of course, a nonprofit organization. We're not a corporation, but we could have this kind of a setup within the corporation. Yes. And so thank you. And I think I took up a lot of time. So sorry, Jeff, but back to you.
Thank you, Sukanya. And just give me a sec to get back. Okay, and as I listen to your stories, Sukanya, I'm reminded of the adage, right? People don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. So thank you very much. Very quickly, I know we have just run out of time and we just need a little more, one more tool and something to wrap up, yeah? So what are your thoughts on the 5 disciplines and inclusive leaders growth mindset? What would be useful to help your business with to be more effective? Please type that in chat, yeah, so we can learn from you too. And I'd like to share with you one tool, and this tool is based on neuroscience by David Rock. Allow me to very simply say, if in any interaction, the status of a person, certainty, people don't know what's going on, they're uncertain, they feel there's no autonomy, they can't control anything, there's no relatedness, right? It's me against the world and it's absolutely unfair. You will trigger a threat response, meaning fight, flight, or freeze. The good news, ladies and gentlemen, is in that same situation, if you can increase status, make things more certain, give that person some agency over certain parts, if not the whole piece. And that's relatedness. It's not me standing alone against a very high power distance person, right? That someone has my back. And it's fair. Not only does the person feel safe, that person will want to participate, engage, and will give you more discretionary effort. So the example I give is very much in our daily work lives, performance management. When you have a performance management conversation, boss and direct report, Does the person feel status up or down, certainty high or low? Does the person have agency, know what's going to happen, control over that conversation? Is it something to do with someone who has my back or not? Is it fair, right? The message I like to send is this: if we want to build inclusion and have people belong and be engaged, we can use neuroscience to turn that threat response on its head to build a sense of belonging and safety. And we can take this conversation offline if you're interested in that, yeah? Lastly, the point I'd like to make, ladies and gentlemen, is that one thing you can do after this to help build inclusion and belonging is to have inclusive conversations. The definition is here, I won't go into it, but how to have inclusive conversations? I say there are 5 things that need to happen. One, there needs to be a commitment on all parties, right? There needs to be a political will to want to make this happen. It takes 2 hands to clap. There needs to be this self-awareness of what we don't know, our behaviors, our implicit bias, and how that might affect that relationship. We need to adopt a growth mindset so that we can then discern our behavior and learn what our impact might be and adjust accordingly. We need to have the tools to be able to be inclusive and bring about belonging. And one way to start is the 5 disciplines. Gauri has also shared her version of inclusive leadership. It works, yeah? And let's reward the brain, yeah? So the brain will want to feel safe. Can we use the SCARF model then to help people extend that relationship throughout the whole work environment? And when I discussed this with Selmi, Gauri, and Sukanya, we realized that it is not so much a linear kind of model we are looking at. It is more like this, where all these 5 elements happen at the same time and builds on each other. So if we want to steer ourselves towards a more inclusive conversation, ladies and gentlemen, do consider these 5 elements and go out, have those inclusive conversations. And I'd like to invite you now to just have a visioning exercise, right? Imagine what will happen if all your leaders in your organization lead with inclusive conversations. What will that look like? Can you light the fire to make this happen? Please type that in chat. We'd love to hear from you. And while you're typing in chat, I leave you with the words of Rumi. Yesterday, I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today, I'm wise, so I'm changing myself. We'd love to hear from you, ladies and gentlemen. Over to you, Charlotte.
Can you hear me? Great. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. Thank you for a wonderful sessions. Great sharing from Jeffrey, Chan Hong, Raymond, Gauri, Sukanya, as well as Salmi. The last thought that I would like to leave with everybody is, and through the chat we saw those information. As leaders, what do we really do? We know that based on that 5 principles that Jeffrey talked about, the trust, the belief, the growth mindset, and 2 others are really important in setting the organizational culture and belief. So while leaders setting their vision and mission, they know at the same time, they will set the purpose along with their growth mindset, along with diversity as the background. And that's how the day-to-day execution will come in alignment, in harmony. A few good examples in other organizations, like my organization, Standard Chartered Bank. So what we do is we have that kind of diversity inclusion committees that work on various kinds of programs, whether it is words sharing, like different kinds of words used at the workplace, or like a diversity work, or via volunteering work activities, or via diversity talks. So all these kind of activities, including food tasting, will bring together a kind of harmony environment from physical to mindset. And this is exactly what Jeffrey talked about the 5 principles and the SCARF. And you heard that a lot. All this again translated throughout our day-to-day from Chan-Hoon's story, Raymond's, Gauri, Sukanya's story, as well as Salmi's message. So finally, I would like to thank SNEF for publishing this event for us throughout the last 3 weeks. So thank you, Jerry, Kim Guan, and Ivy. Again, I want to thank Salmi for bringing forward these activities through IWA. Likewise, I want to thank Jenny, Grace, and Monica again for bringing this event and guiding us in this event. Finally, thank you, Jeffrey, Chan-Hoon, Salmi, Gauri, and Sukanya, as well as Raymond, for making this event happen. We will record this in with an MCCY bridge site or website, so you'll be able to draw the video as well as the PowerPoints. Now, the last request from you, to get feedback from you, we have at the microsite, meaning where you are now, on your left side, there's a panel to impose or to post your feedback. Please do give us your feedback and let us how we do. Again, in the Grow Mindset, we want to know how we're doing. Thank you, everybody. Have a good Friday and have a good weekend. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I've got love making me whole. Since you've opened up your heart and shined on me.